This is Coffee with Kelly, a dynamic podcast that's dedicated to driving positive change in school safety. I'm your host, Ethan Woodman, Product Marketing Specialist for Crisis Go, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Kelly Moore, Senior School Safety Specialist for Crisis Go. Our mission is to empower you with essential knowledge, tools, and inspiration required to foster a safer and more secure school environment. We hope this podcast will be the catalyst for transformation in your schools. Join us as we continue to dive into the world of school safety. Alrighty. Good morning, Kelly.
Ethan, what do we got today?
So I think we got at least two things we can talk about. Which one do you want to talk about first?
Doesn't matter.
Let's do the more news-ish thing.
Okay.
So September 10th, the same day we actually recorded our last podcast, but this event happened shortly after. September 10th, quite a day. I'll just talk about the event that happened at the school. This kind of happened in the middle of the day. I think it was around 12:30, a little bit less. So at a high school, basically a kid came in and he was in the school before he started opening fire, and I believe this was with a revolver, from what I remember. He was carrying additional rounds with him, and according to this article, it says quite a bit more ammunition. So whatever that means. So started firing off rounds. So he had shot one student inside the building, and then he had moved and then to outside and then shot another student, and then by that time the police had shown up, and then at that time he just took his own life at that point. So unfortunate. I guess he was 16 as I'm reading. So from when the first 911 call was made, deputies arrived within 2.5 minutes. That's pretty good.
Yeah, keep going. I'm going to explain something there. And I don't know if this is the case, but keep going. Just remind me to talk to you about response times.
Okay. The school said the shooter fired roughly 20 rounds. So I'm pretty sure this was with a revolver. So he must have reloaded a couple times. Interesting.
Almost 4 times.
Yeah. Yeah, because most only have 5.
6.
6?
38s.
Yeah.
Yeah, 38s are usually 6.
So it does talk about, they credit the school for, doing a really good job at doing their safety protocols, and that's what really helped save lives there. It's interesting that they attribute it to the, what do we call it? Those foundational, like, it's not solely dependent on technology, but it's just here,
your muscle memory,
your muscle memory, so it's good.
Unfortunately, this area, they've had their fair share of incidences. They use the standard response protocols in the state of Colorado where this occurred. So they're pretty diligent in working through most of those schools in that area. So, but it goes to show you that no matter how much you work, how much you try, there are times that it can happen. I don't know why it happens so much in this area. We were talking about that a little bit before this. They do adhere to their safety plans pretty significantly, and I think that does help save lives. I don't know what led up to this. That's part of what we're going to talk about, is some of the conversations that were found, some of the information that was found subsequently. These things are all tragic, and once we get to bang, in our left of bang, now we're in response mode. And it's too late to go back and learn what you're supposed to do. And so you have to have learned all of those things that you're supposed to do before the incident is triggered. So that's what good drills will do, good exercises, good protocols that are simple, easily followed. As a company, we exist to make that quicker. Quicker is generally better, but that's not the goal, is to be quicker. The goal is to do it correctly as fast as you can. And that is done with practice. Good on them for having those in place and working through those properly.
I guess the conversation around this is they noted that, so obviously with these, I don't know if you refer to these as the after action report part of it, but they look into, motive, they look into all that kind of stuff, and they find that, he was posting stuff on some certain online spaces, as they say. They don't list what that was, but they do say is, and I'll just read this. It says, what was most concerning about the shooter's online footprint was that he was engaging in some online spaces that have animated previous school shooters, but combined the glorification of violence with some kind of extremist ideas. It seems like they're finding a common area where these people that want to do violence are basically congregating to share their
thoughts,
their thoughts, and it's like I was talking to you earlier. It's like, I don't. At some point, like, do we monitor these sites? But you mentioned that they'll probably just go somewhere else, and
so it's this game that we play, and we're always playing catch up in the preventative side. We're trying to discover where they're going to, what they're doing, what they're saying. And so this comes into this much bigger argument of privacy and government oversight and invasion of privacy, protected speech, all of these different philosophical concerns. And we see this more and more in technology, where there's a double, I'm going to call it a double-edged sword. And it's where we create better security to protect people's personal information that they don't want to share, so they're not victimized by somebody who is ill-willed and somebody who's looking to harm them, either financially, bully them over cyber, online type social medias and those types of things, right? But at the same time, you protect them as well.
Right.
Even when I was in law enforcement, we've had social media companies that just flat out refuse to cooperate with federal government in providing information about these people. And they basically said, sue us. And that's when social media companies, they just said, we'll see if it's important enough for them to do that, because we have the high-priced attorneys and we'll fight this. And even though we had a court order asking for the information. So they're saying that court doesn't count, essentially. And so, but we're also seeing higher and higher levels of security in just our media, our technology, and rightfully so. We used to have just passwords. Now we have biometrics, right?
Yeah, multi authentication stuff,
and there's other stuff that's coming out that is going to be.
You got facial recognition.
Well, not only that, this is going to be kind of a mischaracterization of the technology, but I think you'll get the point if you understand what I'm going to say. Okay. Do you remember the Enigma machine that Germany used during remember what that was?
Wasn't there a documentary or wasn't there a movie on this?
There is.
I watched the movie on this.
Yes. Now you're saying, oh no, what is it?
I can't remember exactly what it was. I'm not gonna.
Essentially what it is that the Germans coded their messages with this machine. Yeah. And so in order to decode the message, you needed to have a separate code to start decoding from. So you needed a code to decode the code. Does that make sense? And this machine would just, every time you created a message, it would just switch. It would switch the dials. So you had to understand where the starting point was for that machine. And so as you got a new message, the next message, if you figured out that one, the next one was already changed. So they felt that it was unbreakable. But there's now going to be code, and there's already code, that essentially every time you log into it, it changes. Your information is the same.
Right.
And it's creating a relationship between you and whoever has the technology. And that technology has to verify that relationship. And every time you try to verify that relationship, the way that the code is presented, if you know the code, then you can verify the relationship. If you don't, you can't, because it's two-way. And this is saying, I know who Kelly is, and Kelly's saying, I know who you are. So that relationship is verified.
Interesting.
Yeah, that technology is available, but it's not widely accepted, but it's going to be more and more. So, like they say, and essentially foolproof. If you can create it, you can break it.
Somewhat off topic, but another similar movie to that is Code Talkers.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That's a good one.
Yeah. That was because they just used a forgotten language.
Yeah.
That was,
the
Navajo, the Navajo, right? But they used a language that nobody knew. And they couldn't, back in the day when there was the Code Talkers, only that group of people knew what they were actually saying.
Yeah, and they could not be captured. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's wild. I love the based on true story stuff.
Yeah. But
I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but the reality is when you're talking online and stuff, there are companies that do critical word searches, and if you say school shooting or mass murder or whatever, they can start mining that information to see as a warning. In order to do that, you kind of have to have access to their stuff. But some of it is they're getting access to it when students are turning in projects and papers and things like that. So, right. But what we're really talking about is the identification of leakage. Mm-hmm. To me, it's still one of the biggest indicators for me that something is going to happen. Now, when we were talking earlier, you said something about, and I want to reiterate this or reinforce this, and that is, you said something about the initial investigations showed that there just wasn't enough there to take that next step.
They interviewed some former FBI intelligence analysts, and so I think it was her that was saying that, unfortunately they can't jump on every little thing that comes out. They need some certain amount of evidence to say, okay, this is enough for me to go and essentially arrest somebody. Mm-hmm. There's only so much they can do if not every brick is there. I don't know if that's a good way to put it, but
yeah. But you're building a wall, and you have to add pieces to that wall. And as you're building those pieces, you every once in a while you take a step back and you say, "Is my wall done?" And you go, "No, it's not done yet." So then you have to find more pieces, right? And then eventually you're going to take your step back and you're going to go, "Oh, I got it. I see what it is. It's a wall." It's not a wall when you put the first stone in it. It's not a wall when you put the first brick into it. It's not until it's completed enough that you really say, "Oh, this is a wall." And you don't have to complete it. And this is maybe some of the shortcomings of how I explain this. Because sometimes I say, "Oh, you have a wall." Well, the wall doesn't have to be complete for you to take the next action and for you to recognize that it's a wall.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think sometimes that's what people tend to look at. At some point, you're going to say, oh, that's going to be a wall. So
that's a good way to put it.
That's going to be a wall. And I just need more bricks to finish this. But if you recognize that you need more bricks, what do the bricks or the stones represent? Actions taken by the perpetrator, the bad actor, right? As the FBI likes to say, the bad actor. If you notice that there are things missing, then you have to look at what is missing. And if you compare that to, let's say, the pathway to violence, then you can start looking for those missing pieces. Or maybe you've caught up with the status. The bad actor is right with you. You found all of the stones that they've put into place at this point. So what do you do with that? Well, you can't just sit back and say, yeah, there's nothing else we can do. What you can do is, and this follows into the left of bang doctrine, where you look at, okay, what are my thresholds? What do I do if I find this? What are my actions when I find this piece of information? And what I'm talking about is you might find somebody who's been victimized and all of those little stones that indicate that they've been victimized. And then you see the transition into the grievance and how it's negatively impacting their everyday life. They're starting to get angry. They've identified that they've been wronged and this isn't good. And so now we need to move into that. Now they start trying to solve their problem. They've identified that they have a problem. Now they start trying to solve their problem. And that's where violent ideation comes in, is that now they've determined that violence is a potential solution to their problem. So let's say you're there. And so now you look at the next steps on that pathway, which are research and planning, preparation, probing, breaching, then the attack. But if you look there and say, yeah, there's a lot of stuff here, but it's just not enough, then you say, well, what is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where does this place them on the pathway to violence? And then you say, okay, we've got them into this violent ideation stage. And so now we start saying, okay, if I start seeing research into past shootings, I start seeing research into types of weapons, types of clothing. I start seeing research into target locations. I start seeing writings, those types of things. Then I can say, if I see that, what am I going to do? How am I going to act? What am I going to put into motion to prevent them from going to the next stage? Right? Because that's what we're trying to do. And
when we've talked about this before, is it true that like each stage, your time frame to act within that stage is shorter and shorter? Would I be correct in saying that?
So let me say it this way.
Okay.
The further along you go in that pathway, each step becomes more urgent for you. There's no time frame associated with that.
Okay, so they could be in a probing and breaching stage for
months,
a couple days, or they could be in it for a couple months. It's all
it's all driven by circumstance, environment, all these different factors. But it also means that it could be a couple of minutes.
Right?
That's
a scary thought.
right? So it becomes more urgent because you're closer to the actual event, the actual incident. So you have less opportunity because they're further down the path. So if they're in the probing and breaching stage, if they're there, they've already done all of their planning. But if they're in the violent ideation stage, well, now they still need to do their research. They need to look at working through the steps. How do I do this? How do I get my equipment? How do I find a firearm? How do I get access to that? How do I get a weapon? What's my target? What is my target? And is it a viable target? Those types of questions still have to be answered. But if they're up into the probing and breaching stage, most of those questions have already been answered. They've already acquired all of that stuff. So the further down, it becomes more urgent for you, and the situation becomes more imminent. So once you start seeing that, then you have to change your response from, there's just not enough, there's not much else we can do, to, okay, what can I do? Right? This is getting more and more serious. Might not reach the criminal level yet. It might not even really be gaining any momentum, but it will if it's left unchecked. And so I get it. And the FBI, Secret Service, and local law enforcement, they're tasked with many, many different issues. And each of these different issues come in large volumes. So they have to be, for lack of a better term, selective in which ones they act on, which ones they forward, which ones they directly address, those types of things. So there's a priority to them, a scale of action. It begs us to understand that just because there's no direct action we can take, that doesn't mean our hands are tied. Well, there's nothing we can do. Well, yes, you can, because if you see this progressing, at some point you can say, well, if it reaches this line, and you draw that line in the sand, if it reaches this line, then I am going to do this. I'm going to plan ahead of time that if I see this or some variation of that, because don't lock yourself into, well, that's not exactly what I was expecting. If it's close enough, then act on it, right? This is why for many years I've been saying, if you see something, act on it, right? Not just see something, say something. If there's absolutely nothing you can do, then you revert back to see something, say something. Maybe somebody else can do something, right? And understand that just because you can't do something with it doesn't mean nothing can be done, right? So if Ethan's in a school, I'm the FBI, and I've done all that I can do, maybe I should call Ethan and say, hey, I got this little thing, and I really can't do much else. It concerns me. It's just outside of my parameters. There's not much I can do. Can we meet, and can I talk to you about it? Or can I send you what I have? Can we discuss it? Maybe we can help each other out here. Like when I call Ethan and I say, hey, this is the FBI. I've got little Johnny who's posting this stuff, and we've done all that we can do. And he goes, Ethan goes, okay. We've been having problems with little Johnny. This helps us.
Because maybe they found stuff that you didn't have access to, or something like that.
So let me explain this part of that concept. We've always done it where I build the wall as the primary builder of the wall, the primary mason. And we're trying to find or build the wall to identify actions that Johnny may or may not take. But just because I'm building a wall doesn't mean somebody else isn't building a similar wall. Ethan and Kelly may be building a wall on the same person with different information. And maybe if we got together, we could build that wall much quicker.
I like that analogy.
If we want to use the metaphor there, if I'm building a wall and I start at one end of the wall and we're going to build a wall that comes around a corner, and you start on the other end, the other corner, and you and I never see each other, but we're both building what will essentially become the same wall. And I think I have to go all the way around the corner, and you think you have to come and go all the way around the corner to get to my side. But if we start working together and we meet in the middle, or we start working together to build that wall, we get that wall done twice as quickly.
Yeah.
Metaphorically speaking, right?
Yes.
So this is the importance, the demonstration of the importance of partnerships and communicating and taking that next step. Not just saying, yep, there was no threat. When you say that, what do you mean? There was no threat. Well, I did all I could do. I couldn't arrest him. We had this in my case. Somebody I think it was his mom, reported some concern that she thought the suspect in my case was going to harm himself. And we went and did all that we could do. And there was just nothing else we could do legally. Did it mean that he didn't have an issue? No. It just means that we couldn't do anything legally because our legal threshold is either criminal or a determination of whether they're going to harm themselves or other. If we can't make those, we can say good luck to that. We can make recommendations. We can tell mom what she can do, but there's only so much that we can do legally. But that doesn't mean there's nothing that can be done. And I think those are the big gaps that we need to fill, and why it's so important that we have good working relationships with the other people who can fill those gaps.
Before I forget, you wanted me to remind you, I had said something about response time.
Response times. Yeah. 2.5 minutes or 2.5 minutes, right?
Yeah, it's 2.5.
Is a very fast response time.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to caution people and say, just because somebody was there in 2.5 minutes doesn't mean that that's the norm.
No, it's closer to 8 to 10 or something like that.
Yeah. But also understand this, and response times are not necessarily when they get the 911 call to when somebody shows up. Because when somebody gets the 911 call, the dispatcher, they have to figure out what it is first.
Yeah.
Why are you calling me?
If you're doing that on the phone, it could be like a 5-minute conversation.
It could be. And what's your emergency, right? The first, almost universally, when they pick up 911, what's your emergency? That's almost universal. And you say, I have an active shooter. First of all, you're not going to be that calm. And so they're going to say, where is it? Where are you? Where are you calling from? Blah, 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 right? So they have to figure out what's going on. How many? Where's it at? Where are they at currently? They're going to ask all these questions. Many dispatch systems or centers will say, we have an active shooter at XYZ high school. Another dispatcher is going to start dispatching units, receiving a report of. So it happens fairly quick. But then they have to get from wherever they are to where they're needed, right? So this is one of the primary reasons that we escalate through either the use of the panic buttons or through our alerting apps and so forth, why we escalate directly to law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
So they're getting that alert. I'm sure there's a delay, but it's nanoseconds of getting that report, followed up by a 911 call or some sort of direct two-way communications, whether it's radios, message groups, what have you. That's why it's so important to have these technologies available to you, is because if you have what is considered a very quick response time of 2.5 minutes, but it actually took them 7 minutes to decipher what was needed, and then they got 2.5 minutes from the time they got dispatched to response to arrival, then that's a different story, right? So and that's why we say, and I've said this for years, and probably I don't say it enough or often enough, is it's more important for somebody to press the alert, whether it's a panic button or through the app or what have you, to press that alert than it is to call 911. And the reason I say that is because even if they're 2.5 minutes away, you still have to protect yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to alert everyone to allow them to protect themselves first. If you have the ability to do both, alert and notify first responders, that's your best case scenario. Well, that's not really your best case scenario. Your best case is you see it coming and then you alert.
Yeah.
And get everyone into a protective action before any shots are fired. Not waiting for shots to be fired. That's the deal with the response times. 2.5 minutes is still good. I do know in one incident that I had when I was a school safety coordinator for a district, we had a report of a gun and a response time of under 3 minutes. I don't remember the exact time, but it was under 3 minutes. But I know that was from time of sight to time of arrival because I have them both on camera.
No.
Right. So I have
the
reporting person seeing the gun. It wasn't a gun, but she thought it was a gun. Seeing what she believed was a weapon, to the time that I see deputies coming into the frame, which just under 3 minutes. That worked out very well, but that's not the norm. That wasn't even the norm for us in the sheriff's department.
Yeah, I think like 8 to 10. I think that might be an average. So like it all depends on what type of area that you're in. Like I feel like if you're in a city, I feel like your response time is going to be quicker. But if you're in one, it all depends on how close that police station is or whatever is to wherever you are, and it could be more than that. So that it just further shows that what you're saying is, you got to learn how to protect yourself.
Yeah, you're responsible for protecting yourselves and your students and so forth. Sure, they're going to get there, but you don't know how long that's going to be. And I can tell you that response time, even though it's 3 minutes, is an awful long time when shots are being fired or you believe that shots are going to be fired. All I have to say is, if you don't believe me, I think they're still up on YouTube if you search them, search the Harvest Festival in Las Vegas. And you can see video of the incident, and you can hear in the background the number of rounds they are shooting, that suspect is shooting in a minute. Well over 100.
Wild.
I mean, it's crazy. Not to say that they're all going to be that way or what have you, but the potential there, and your stress levels are through the roof. Your response to those, your biological, physiological responses to those are shutting things down. It's a long time. So that's why practice, that we talked about this, I think, on the last podcast, about practice that allows you to calm yourself, that allows you to work through it because you know what to do, you know what to expect. And the unknown causes a lot more stress and trauma than the known because you get small doses of it. So that's across the board. So you have rural areas, urban areas, suburban areas. And even in some of the urban areas, it can be pretty lengthy because it's so congested that there aren't cops in every doorstep. So they're not all in cars. New York City, and I don't know what their response times are, but you see a lot of them on foot because it's so congested, they can't get around, or it's very difficult to get around by use of car. So they're on foot patrol or horses or bicycles or what have you. And so just because you're in an urban setting doesn't mean you have a quick response times. But in some areas of our country, this still baffles me. You may have one deputy on duty for an entire county. So if you have a large county, you've got an hour. In some
That's
cases,
crazy.
right? So
that's wild. All right. So I guess the second thing we can talk about real quick is, so within your Zero Now
community,
within the Zero Now community, someone posted, the main question was around what people do for student IDs.
mm-hmm.
And, are we requiring that students wear the ID visibly on their person somewhere? Are we varying the IDs? Do we have like seniors wear a different color ID, whatever, right? So the reason for this was they actually had what was referred to as a non-student in the school for 3 hours before they figured out that it was a non-student. So I guess
was it an adult or a child? The non-student, do we know?
from what I read, it seemed that it was a student-aged person.
I mean, that goes to reason because they're asking about student identification and stuff, right?
I feel like 3 hours is a really long time to figure that out. Like if I was in a school and there was a kid in there that like no one recognized as a student, wouldn't the students like say something?
But maybe the students recognized him. Maybe he just wasn't a friend of somebody else's who's there.
Maybe he just went to a different school and then just showed up there, and that's...
I never had this happen, but I never brought this kid to school. But there were many kids in my neighborhood when I was growing up that went to private school.
Okay.
So if that kid, one of those kids, showed up at my school, most of the kids that went to my school would know who he was. They might just say, "Hey, what are you doing here?" "Oh, I just thought I'd hang out." "Okay, cool." They're not going to be that person, right? The bigger concern is for the teachers, right? And we also have to understand in this day and age, if a student from another school or from somewhere else showed up, I mean, it could have been a relative,
like a cousin or
that was visiting.
Sure. Okay.
Right. And there's all kinds of circumstances that would just be, why didn't you know? And there's not much harm. Obviously, nothing came of it, or we'd be hearing about it in a different forum. The reality is in today's day and age, you have to question why somebody is in your school for 3 hours. And what are they doing there? Why are they here? Right? "Oh, I was just checking." Were they checking? What could this be on if you're going to take the
pathway to violence?
pathway to violence? Where
yeah,
are they
it's that's probing and breaching for sure.
Right?
Breaching, sure. Literally.
Yeah, we had a similar circumstance when we had a kid go. It was a middle schooler or something that went to an elementary school, walked around, and was brandishing like airsoft guns or something like that, right?
Yes.
They just said, "This is stupid. What are you doing here? Get out of here," right? Or I think he was actually arrested.
Yeah, that one, the teacher actually went up to the kid and confronted him, even though this kid
Yeah.
he didn't know that the gun was not real. He just went up to him and it's like crazy. It's like, wow, okay.
What is the real motive behind somebody doing that? That's especially in today's day and age. People, even kids, understand that you don't just do that as a joke, right?
Yeah.
Generally speaking.
It's
So
it's interesting because I feel like it would have had to be some relative situation or something. Because if you don't have to be at school, why would you want to be at school? Is wouldn't you want to be home playing video games or going out playing basketball or doing anything else? Like what?
some of the hardest people to get to pay attention to school, and some of the kids that are in the most trouble, when you suspend them, you know where they end up. You suspend them. They don't want to be there. They're disruptive. They're bucking the system every step of the way. They're
Sure.
misbehaving. They're challenging authority. And you suspend them. You know where you find them?
What, back at school?
Back at school.
What?
Because they have nowhere else to go.
Wow.
Right? They have broken homes. They have, sometimes it's to flaunt that, hey, I'm here. Ha ha. Right? It's
I'll
that
do
next,
what I want. You
that
can't
next
tell me.
level.
Okay.
Yeah. The next level
Interesting.
of defiance. But it's crazy.
Could
That
have been one of those situations too.
I don't know how many times I've been called to a school about a kid who was suspended, who refuses to leave. Right?
So maybe it was something like that.
But you walk into him and you say, dude, what are you doing here? And he goes, I just wanted to be here. You do everything in your power to get suspended and so forth. If you want to be here, just behave yourself. They'd be happy to have you. Well,
yeah. We'll educate you. We'll feed you.
Yeah, we'll do it all. It's one of those things
crazy.
that it is crazy. It goes beyond just asking, well, how do you identify? There are very few schools that somebody at their school doesn't know everybody. I mean, somebody knows it, right? The problem is, and this is how this happens, is I don't recognize that school. Do we know what level of school this was? Was it a high school or a elementary school? Elementary schools are much better at knowing the kids.
I honestly can't. I can't remember. I should have had it pulled up, but
yeah, I'm not sure it even said. The idea is, if you do find that person, what are the next steps? Why are you here? Who'd you come with? All of that stuff. Try to identify that. Then they bring that question to the forum to say, how do you identify those kids who are supposed to be in the school and those who are not? Do you designate different badges for different levels of students? For me, the reality comes to this. If you don't know all of your students on site, then your building is not secure. And so you need a way to validate or verify that that person has access to your school. Generally speaking, we make all of our teachers, all of our faculty, all of our support staff wear identification. And there's only 100 of those. Now you're talking several hundred or thousands in some schools. How can you verify that all of those kids are supposed to be in your school? Identification. Now, I don't know the reason to issue identifications by classification, by student level, senior, junior, sophomore, freshman. High school is generally the only way, or the only schools that classify by status like that. Sure, the other ones say, okay, you're an 8th grader, you're a 7th grader, you're a 6th grader. They all know what grade you're supposed to be in. So going through the added effort to identify whether or not somebody is in a certain grade If you have a reason to do that, then by all means do it. As an example, and again, I don't know of any school who does this. Well, there is. I'll give you an example from my school. My high school was actually a K through 12 school. It was a U-shaped building with 2 stories. If you walked into the door and you turned to the left on the first floor, you would be entering at the center of the bottom of the U in the U-shaped building. So you would go to the left. On that first floor was your K. They didn't have pre-K back then. Your kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade. If you went to the left and went upstairs, fourth, fifth, and sixth. If you went to the right, first floor, junior high. Upstairs was generally high school. There was some intermingling there. So you could theoretically cordon off those buildings and say, or those areas and say, you should only be here if you're in the fourth, fifth, or sixth grade. You should only be here if you're in high school or junior high, etc. So I could see them doing that, but there are some exceptions to that. So you need to account for that. Absent a need, I wouldn't see that there was a need to stratify them, make them in different classifications. In fact, I could see some facilitation for bullying by separating and identifying them differently. Although generally speaking, there is a huge difference between a ninth grader, a freshman, and a senior. Physically, the way they carry themselves. So, but advertising it, I don't know. But the point here is you, as a safety person, need to create a system or a process by which the schools can identify and know who's in the building.
Whether that's by your eyes or technology, whatever.
Yep.
Whatever suits you best, just have something.
Yep. Wearing a card. Are the other issues significant enough to not do it? So you have to create those balances. So if you're requiring everyone to wear identification, are you checking it? Because
it's like the whole metal detector thing. Oh, we have it, but you don't use it. You don't use it properly.
And when I say check it, every once in a while, spot check. If you don't know somebody by sight, go and introduce yourself and say, "Let me see your ID." And if they're wearing it, pull it and see, "Yep, this is you. This is your ID card, and this ID card belongs in this building. Thanks. Nice meeting you. Move on." Right? Because when you get used to seeing something hanging around somebody's neck, I can wear just about any ID or anything and push my way through.
Yeah.
I see this at conferences all the time. Or I do this. I left my ID at my booth. Okay, put it on next time. I see it all the time where they're just checking to see if I have something around my neck. I don't know why this seems to happen with me. I don't care which way I put my badge. In a matter of minutes, that badge is going to spin around and it's going to be the backside facing out.
Yeah.
It never seems to be the right side. It never. I'm constantly doing this with my badge, but I see it all the time.
Yeah.
I have seen some that have been very good. Nope, you can't go in. They're not open, but I'm a vendor. Oh, where's your ID? It's at my booth waiting for me. Yeah, have somebody bring it out. Okay.
Yeah, we had that last time.
Yep. So I've seen it work very well, but I've also seen more times than not, I see it. They're looking to see if you have a lanyard and something hanging from it. Because what's the first thing I do when I get to a conference? I change my lanyard.
Oh.
I wear a Crisis Go lanyard. Why? Because that's the company I'm representing. And philosophically, and this is just something that I do, is because sometimes my competitor is sponsoring the lanyards. So one of my competitors bought everyone the lanyards. I get it, but I'm not wearing it. I'm not going to advertise for my competitor. So I always take a couple of Crisis Go lanyards with me. Can't say always. I try to. So that one of the first things I do is when I get my ID card and the lanyard, I take the lanyard off. I actually keep all my lanyards. I have them all hanging up to remind me where I've been. At the show, I'm wearing a Crisis Go one. So they're just looking for a lanyard with something attached to it. They're not looking for
that specific.
Right. So I would venture to say that people are going to start personalizing both their ID cards and their lanyards to make them unique. If you're checking them, that's fine. If you're doing it correctly, you have one point of entry, you have an ID card that is scanned like everyone has to go through, like TSA, that you are allowed in this building. There's flaws with that, but if you're doing it and you want to make sure that to the best of your ability that the people that are in your building are the only ones that are supposed to be here, they have to go through a checkpoint. Then after that, whether or not they're allowed to be there is something for you to spot check every now and again. The other issues that it comes up is, what if they're not carrying it? Are you creating disciplinary potential that is kind of adding more things to discipline a kid over? Here's what I do think. I think there has to be consequences. If you set a standard, you have to set the standard, stick by the standard, and there has to be consequences for not following the standard.
Yeah.
What are those? I don't know.
Yeah.
They don't have to be suspension. I guess it could elevate it to that point if they refuse. I'm not doing it. Well, then you're not coming to school. Right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but that's something that you have to address, because ultimately it's for the safety of the others, not the safety of that kid. I mean, ultimately you want everyone to be only the people in there, but it also gives you a time to check everybody, see how they're doing. That first point of contact in the morning. How you doing today? You look a little off today, dude. What's going on? You need to talk? Let's talk. Right? So there's other reasons to do it. Sure, it's a lot of effort. Sure, I get it. But being safe takes effort. Bottom line is, I don't care how you do it, but you need to be as sure as you can be that you have the right people in your building.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And if you have any questions about what we discussed, leave a comment on our website at crisisgo.com. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time on Coffee with Kelly, a discussion on school safety.